could not take away my eyes when I saw my madam without cloth. Our hands met, almost by accident, as she reached for the candle to steady its flicker. The touch was electric, sending a jolt through my entire being. I tried to pull away, but she held on, her fingers curling around mine. "You don't have to go," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes held a question, one that left me breathless. In that moment, the world outside ceased to exist, and all that mattered was the connection between us. When I first arrived at Madame Clara's grand house, I had no idea how much my life was about to change. The city was a bustling maze of lights and sounds, so different from the quiet village I had left behind. The house was enormous, with walls adorned with paintings that seemed to watch your every move. Madame Clara herself was elegant and intimidating, her presence commanding attention wherever she went. I was just a houseboy, tasked with cleaning, running errands, and keeping my head down. Little did I know destiny had other plans. It happened on a quiet evening. The household was unusually still, as Madame Clara had sent the other staff away for the weekend. I was cleaning the study when I heard a faint noise from the bedroom upstairs. Curious but hesitant, I climbed the staircase, my footsteps barely making a sound on the polished wooden floor. The door to her room was slightly ajar, and through the crack I caught a glimpse of her. Not the composed, untouchable woman I knew, but someone human, vulnerable, and utterly captivating. Before I could avert my gaze, the door creaked, and she turned, catching me in my moment of transgression. Her face flushed with a mix of shock and something I couldn't quite place. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her voice sharp but trembling. I stumbled over my words, apologizing profusely, my face burning with embarrassment. She wrapped a robe around herself hastily, but instead of yelling or firing me on the spot, she paused, studying me with an expression I couldn't decipher. The air was thick with tension as she stepped closer, her eyes searching mine. "You've been here for months, and yet I know so little about you," she said softly. I didn't know how to respond. My heart pounded as I fumbled to explain myself, but she silenced me with a gentle wave of her hand. "There's no need for excuses. Perhaps I've been too distant." Her voice was no longer commanding but carried a warmth I had never heard before. Over the following days, something shifted between us. Madame Clara began asking about my life, my dreams, and the family I had left behind. She shared pieces of her own story, revealing struggles and loneliness hidden beneath her composed exterior. Our conversations grew longer, often stretching late into the night. It was as if an invisible wall between us had crumbled, and for the first time I felt seen, not as a servant but as a person. The bond between us deepened with each passing day. What started as stolen moments of conversation in the kitchen or the study turned into shared laughter over evening tea. Still, there was an unspoken rule between us, a line that neither dared to cross. She was my employer after all, and I was the houseboy. But there was something in the way her eyes lingered on mine, something in the way my heart raced whenever she was near, that hinted at a storm brewing beneath the surface. The night the rain poured down in relentless sheets was the night everything changed. The power went out, plunging the house into darkness. I lit a candle and carried it through the hallways, ensuring everything was in order. As I passed by her room, I heard her voice call out, soft but urgent. "Is that you?" she asked. I stepped inside, the flickering light casting shadows on the walls. She stood by the window, gazing out at the storm. "Stay," she whispered, and I obeyed, drawn by something I couldn't explain. We sat by the candlelight, the sound of rain pattering against the windows. She opened up to me in a way she never had before, her voice tinged with vulnerability. She spoke of a life filled with expectations, of a marriage that had ended in heartbreak, and of the loneliness that lingered in this grand house. "Do you ever feel like you don't belong?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "Every day," I admitted, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Our hands met, almost by accident, as she reached for the candle to steady its flicker. The touch was electric, sending a jolt through my entire being. I tried to pull away, but she held on, her fingers curling around mine. "You don't have to go," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes held a question, one that left me breathless. In that moment, the world outside ceased to exist, and all that mattered was the connection between us. The storm outside grew fiercer, but inside, the air was warm and thick with unspoken desire. She stepped closer, her gaze locked onto mine. "I don't know what this is," she said, her voice trembling, "but I can't fight it anymore." My heart thundered in my chest as I cupped her face, the distance between us evaporating. When our lips finally met, it was as if the dam had broken, unleashing emotions that had been building for weeks, maybe months. What followed was a night unlike any other, filled with passion and unspoken promises. The lines between servant and employer blurred, replaced by something deeper, something neither of us could define. As dawn broke, casting its golden light over the city skyline, we lay side by side, the world outside forgotten. But as the reality of what we had done began to set in, so did the questions. Could this last? Could love truly bridge the gap between two people from such different worlds? The morning brought with it a mixture of emotions, joy, fear, and uncertainty. I busied myself with my usual tasks, avoiding her gaze, but she sought me out in the kitchen. "We need to talk," she said, her tone firm but kind. My heart sank, fearing the worst. "Last night. It meant something to me," she continued, her eyes brimming with sincerity. "But we need to figure out what this means for us, for our future." Her words were a lifeline, filling me with hope. Our secret became harder to keep as the days turned into weeks. The other staff returned, and I could feel their eyes on me, their whispers filling the air. The city was unforgiving when it came to scandal, and we both knew the risks we were taking. Madame Clara remained steadfast, refusing to let the judgment of others dictate her feelings. "Let them talk," she said one evening, her hand resting on mine. "What we have is worth fighting for." The whispers in the house grew louder, and soon the gossip spilled beyond the walls. One of the older maids, who had worked for Madame Clara for years, caught us in a fleeting moment of intimacy, a stolen glance, a hand brushing against the other's. The next morning, she confronted me in the pantry, her tone dripping with disdain. "Do you think someone like you could ever belong in her world?" she hissed. Her words stung, but they also fueled a quiet determination in me. I wasn't sure where this path would lead, but I knew I couldn't walk away. Madame Clara hosted a grand dinner party, inviting some of the city's most influential figures. My role was simple: serve the guests and remain invisible. But as I moved through the room, balancing trays of wine and hors d'oeuvres, I felt her eyes on me. Our unspoken connection was a lifeline amidst the sea of chatter and laughter. When our hands brushed as she reached for a glass, a spark ignited between us. It was dangerous, reckless even, but in that moment, it felt worth the risk. As the guests left and the house grew quiet, I found her waiting for me in the study. Her face was a mask of resolve. "I can't keep living like this," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Hiding, pretending. If this is going to work, we need to stop being afraid." Her words struck a chord deep within me. For the first time, I realized the depth of her courage and the weight of the risks she was willing to take. "I'm with you," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging in my chest. Madame Clara's decision to take control of our narrative changed everything. She introduced me as her confidant at a social gathering, a calculated move that sent ripples through her circle of acquaintances. The city buzzed with speculation, but she remained unbothered, her poise unshaken. Privately, she encouraged me to pursue my dreams, even arranging for me to take evening classes at a local college. "You're more than what this house makes you," she said, her eyes filled with conviction. Her belief in me lit a fire I hadn't known I possessed. One evening, as I returned from my classes, I found a man waiting in the parlor. He introduced himself as Mr. Ford, a business associate of Madame Clara's late husband. His demeanor was cold, and his words were laced with condescension. "You're playing a dangerous game," he said, his gaze piercing. "Men like you don't last in a world like this." His warning sent a chill down my spine, but I refused to let his words shake me. Madame Clara deserved more than a life dictated by the expectations of others, and so did I. Weeks later, Madame Clara surprised me with an invitation to the city park, a rare moment away from the confines of the house. We walked among the towering trees, the city skyline visible in the distance. As we reached a quiet clearing, she turned to me, her expression softer than I'd ever seen. "Life's too short to live in fear," she said, pulling a small box from her coat pocket. Inside was a simple yet elegant ring. "I want us to face this world together. Will you marry me?" Her words took my breath away, and I could only nod, overwhelmed with emotion. The announcement of our engagement sent shockwaves through the city. It was front-page news, with headlines ranging from supportive to scandalized. Invitations to events were suddenly rescinded, and some of her friends cut ties altogether. But amidst the chaos, we found strength in each other. "Let them talk," she said, her hand clasping mine. "Our story is ours to tell." The engagement reached Madame Clara's family, and the backlash was immediate. Her elder brother, a formidable man with a sharp tongue, arrived unannounced one evening. "Have you lost your mind, Clara?" he bellowed, pacing the grand living room. "Do you realize what this will do to our family name?" She stood her ground, her chin high and her voice unwavering. "I won't let you dictate my happiness. If you care about me, you'll respect my choice." Though her words were resolute, I could see the strain in her eyes. After her brother left, Madame Clara opened up to me about her childhood, a life filled with strict expectations and an unrelenting pursuit of perfection. "I was never allowed to choose," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "Not my education, not my marriage, not even the color of the curtains in my bedroom." Her voice broke, and I held her close. "You're choosing now," I whispered. "And I'll stand by you every step of the way." The tension reached a boiling point when a former employee came forward with fabricated accusations against me. "He's using her," the man claimed, his words spreading like wildfire through the city's gossip columns. Clara's trust in me was unwavering, but the situation weighed heavily on her. "We'll fight this together," she said, her hand gripping mine tightly. Her strength became my anchor, even as the world seemed to conspire against us. One morning, an envelope arrived, addressed to Madame Clara in elegant handwriting. Inside was a single piece of paper with a cryptic message. "End this now, or face the consequences." The letter sent a chill through both of us, but Clara refused to let fear control her. "Whoever this is, they won't win," she declared, her resolve steely. We decided to involve the authorities, but the threat lingered in the back of our minds. In the midst of the chaos, our bond grew stronger. We spent quiet evenings together, sharing dreams and planning a future that seemed both terrifying and exhilarating. "You've shown me a world I never knew existed," she said one night, her head resting on my shoulder. "You've shown me what it means to truly live." Her words filled me with a profound sense of purpose. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged. Despite the obstacles, Clara insisted on moving forward with the wedding. She placed an announcement in the city's largest newspaper, boldly declaring our union. The public reaction was polarizing. Some applauded her bravery, while others called it a scandal of the highest order. We ignored the noise and focused on each other, knowing that our love was worth any price. On the eve of our wedding, Clara's ex-husband's family launched a legal challenge, claiming that her late husband's wealth should disqualify her from marrying someone of lower status. The courtroom battle was intense, filled with heated arguments and thinly veiled prejudice. Clara's lawyer was relentless, dismantling their claims piece by piece. When the judge ruled in our favor, the relief was overwhelming. The wedding was a small, intimate affair, held in a secluded garden away from prying eyes. As Clara walked down the aisle, her smile radiant and her eyes locked on mine, I felt a surge of emotion I couldn't contain. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the whispers, not the threats, not the challenges. It was just us, bound by a love that had defied all odds. As husband and wife, we faced the world together, ready to build a life that was uniquely ours. Clara used her influence to advocate for equality and dismantle the social barriers that had once tried to keep us apart. I continued my education with her unwavering support, and began a career that made me proud. Together, we turned our story into a testament to the power of love and resilience. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel, turn on the notification bell and click on all so as to watch our new story. See you in my next video. Bye.